Welcome back to DSP Leaders World Forum. It's Thursday the 14th of May, and coming up now is our session on digitalisation for sustainability. Before we start, a quick reminder that if you want to ask questions later or join the extra shot programmes, then get in touch with us today. Please don't leave it too late. Details are here on TelecomTV along with our latest poll question. And so on we go with digitalisation for sustainability. The big question is, how can the telecoms industry align the digital and climate agendas of the future? Whilst ICT accounts for less than 2% of global GHG emissions, industrial digitalisation could result in a reduction of 15%, which is about the equivalent of the annual emissions of the whole of the USA. So what steps are service providers taking themselves to become carbon neutral? How does this affect the wider supply ecosystem? And how will transformational network technologies and 5G enable decarbonisation across industry sectors? Time to meet our guests, and I'm delighted to introduce Martin Kriha, VP Smart Production and Automation at Deutsche Telekom. Bernd, who is Head of Energy Performance at Vodafone Group. Gema Esteban Garrido, who is ESG Investors Director at Telefónica. And Aherne, who is Director Communications Infrastructure and General Manager at Intel. Hello everybody, thanks for joining us on the programme.
Hi.
Hello, thank you for inviting us.
Good to be here.
10 years ago now, TelecomTV, we produced a documentary following the industry's attempts to highlight the role that ICT and telecoms can have in reducing emissions. And this was all leading up to the COP15 UN conference in Copenhagen. Now, despite a real good concerted effort by some vendors and some service providers and associations, it really fell on deaf ears, and it was quite disheartening that we didn't see a lot of action then. That was 10 years ago, as I said. What's changed now? Why has it proved so difficult to affect this change, and why do we all believe that now we stand a much better chance? I'd like to try and ask each of you this if I can. Perhaps we start with Martin.
What changed or what was the reason? I think one of the reasons was in the last 10 years. On the one hand side, we can support greenhouse gas emission reduction, especially by digitization. So the one thing is what would not really happened during the last 10 years, that digitization really happened. There was some starts. It happens more and more now, but I think we only in the last couple of years see really the rise of digitization happening. I think the second, even more important thing is that the focus in society changed over the last couple of years towards more sustainability. If that is political pressure, especially out of the EU, for example, or if it was Fridays for Future, I think the society demanding more sustainable solutions in the meantime, and therefore I think the time is now right to do so. Maybe the last thing, and that I wouldn't have said maybe 3 months ago, but due to COVID-19, I think digitization gets another push. Which then enables us to support digitization by our solutions.
Good point, thank you. Gema, what's your view? Why do you think we now stand a very good chance of getting this message across?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for inviting me to this fantastic forum. And I think that from my point of view, there are two fundamental changes that are these drivers of the change that we are now all living. One is society push with, as Martin has mentioned, with millennials and Gen Z generations claiming for more responsibility with the planet and with other social issues. That is a fact, and that is a reality that we are all living in. And the other is that investors and capital markets are paying more and more attention to these ESG matters. No? That's maybe a circle, no? That this is why, and this is all together related. No? Climate change has been one of the first priorities for ESG investors during 2019. And we have to take into account now that there are today 1/3 of the assets under management all over the world, so trillions of dollars or of euros, are being managed under ESG criteria. So this means that investors are paying a lot of attention to this, so that companies need to align with this. No? For example, in Europe, sustainable funds grew more than 58% compared with 2018 compared with 2018, right? And as you said, Guy, at the beginning, no, we know that technology has the potential to reduce global emissions by between 15 and 35 by 2030. No? So we think that digitalization is going to be a main contributor to meet the ambition of zero net emissions by 2050, as it is set by the global goals that we all need to meet. And I think that technology, and especially telecoms, are really supporting other sectors to achieve these environmental goals. No?
Thank you. I turn to Bernd now, if I can. Why do you think now is the time that telecoms can make a positive change?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would agree with Martin and Gema on their assessment. I think that the points I would probably add is looking back at 2010, most companies were really focused on the financial side. So the companies I've been working in then focused mainly on energy efficiency improvement that also had a cost-saving angle to it. Whereas with the Paris Agreement and the recovery, the economic recovery, a lot of companies then focused again on the climate change driver as an additional driver to the one that improves the financial situation of the company. I think in addition, the political framework changed a lot. So you have, for example, regulatory framework for renewable markets. You can do power purchase agreements in a lot of European markets now, with other regions following. And there are schemes available now for sourcing renewable electricity. At the same time, the costs for a lot of technologies have come down. So one example is the renewables, but also looking at the solutions we provide as a telco industry, IoT, narrowband IoT and various connectivity solutions have become much cheaper. So it's much easier to monitor energy consumption in production processes or use IoT applications for smart logistics and other purposes. So overall, I think the political environment has changed, and also technology costs have come down significantly.
Thank you. And Brian, do you believe we as an industry have a stronger message now, or is it also a case, as Bernd's just been saying, that more people are listening and willing to accept some of the proposals we're making?
Well, I think so. So what's different? Well, I think in the last number of years, we've been on this journey that started with NFE of network transformation. So we've been working to modernize the network, and the telecom operators have been doing that at every level, and the supply chain have been coming in to help build out these modern systems and infrastructure. So I think we have this merger of this enormous demand being driven by a number of macro factors, but that's now for the first time lined up with our capability and capacity in terms of the digital technologies and capabilities that are available to us. So I think for the first time, we have that, it's the right time to bring that merger of solving this particular sustainability challenge with all of this technology and capability that we have at our disposal. And we've been on this journey for a few years now. And I think automation is key along that journey. And I think we're right now at the point where we can apply that to the challenges that face us, and we're ready to do so.
Can I ask what you're all doing yourselves in your companies? Martin, is there anything specific that we're seeing that you can tell us about how you're leading by example?
I think a couple of things, and I think especially during the last year and the last 2 years, quite a lot of telecommunications company were going similar routes. But I think the most important thing for us during the last year was really set carbon emission targets on the board level, really coming from the board, including it into the strategy, and then setting up programs to really implement them. What we have defined last year is that by 2030, we want to reduce our CO2 emissions by 90% for our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. That is basically what we do internally and what we need for electricity, and reduce 25% of the overall emissions for the whole customer value chain, so the so-called Scope 3 emissions. I think that is the main challenge currently. Adding to that, we defined that by latest next year, we want to use only renewable electricity, mainly from buying it from the market and by power purchase agreements. I also can say, for example, for Germany, we're already there. So today in Germany, if you're using our telecommunications services, you're using 100% green telecommunication services, as you can say. But I think additionally to the targets and projects to be set up is also to give room for the employees to come up with grassroots initiatives. We have very good experience. We made very good experience by bringing those people together and allow them to come up with their own ideas, give them also the opportunities to drive certain topics in the whole ecosystem. Sometimes that's small things, reusable cups and so on, but there are great ideas also coming out of from the employees to be implemented in the next couple of years.
Thank you. Gema, what about Telefónica? Are we seeing traction from the board level going down throughout the company? Any examples you can share with us?
Yeah, we are all more or less, as Martin said, more or less all in the same path. No, but in Telefónica, for example, talking about from the board level, we have included 4 ESG targets on the CEO variable salary. So they are in the goals of the CEO and the rest of the company, and one of them is especially GHG emissions. No, so this has brought the attention from the top level of the company to the follow-up of this. No, but I have to say that this is not something that new. No, I mean we have been for more than 10 years now. We set up a climate change and energy efficiency office, a global office for the whole footprint of Telefónica. We have, as you very well know, we have been the first issuer of a green bond in the telco industry. That it was back in 2019. We have issued another one this year. And this is because investors has really recognized that we have a good strategy on climate change. You know? And our strategy and our goals are based in twofold or in 2 different axes of this strategy. One is maintaining the energy efficiency, as many of you have commented. The big challenge of our industry is to really, I don't know if we are going to be able to reduce the energy consumption, because, of course, the traffic through our networks is exponentially growing. So our challenge is to really maintain, at least that is what we are trying to achieve, to maintain the energy consumption as at the time as our traffic and the networks are really needing more energy, right? So one is energy efficiency and the other one is betting on renewables. No? And you have mentioned this. We are already, as Martin commented, also 100% renewable in Europe. As you know, we are in Latin America, operating in Latin America, which makes us harder to really meet this 100% renewable, although we have the target to be in 100% renewable for the whole footprint of Telefónica in 2030. And we have very ambitious goals established on climate change. No? For example, we want to reduce our energy consumption per unit of data, because this is a relative measure, by 85% in 2025, right? So I think that we are all, as a sector, pushing a lot on our own, let's say, greening by, but also it is important the way in which we are going to make greener other sectors. No?
Well, let's pick up on the energy consumption point you raised. Bernd, can I ask about what you're doing within Vodafone Group, especially on the area of energy performance?
Yeah, sure. As Gema said, we see an exponential growth in data traffic. So, for example, in Vodafone, our data traffic increased by 1,000% over 5 years. And at the same time, we try to keep energy consumption relatively flat. So we have low single-digit increases in energy consumption, but not that kind of exponential growth that we see on the traffic side. So the key initiatives that we implement is network modernization. So moving from 2G to 3G to 4G and now to 5G allows us to transport the same allows us to transport significantly higher volumes of data by roughly using the same amount of energy. So that transformation is a very important factor in terms of driving energy efficiency. In addition to that, we had a big investment program over the last 2 years, which is going to continue in the future, that we upgrade our power and cooling infrastructure. So that means we replace power systems, rectifiers, cooling system, move to free cooling, improve controls or smart metering, so that we identify where are the areas that we can address in terms of saving energy. And then I think the other big transformation is in the space of virtualization. So shutting down legacy servers, moving the applications on virtual servers in virtual environments into the cloud, typically gives us 80 to 90% reduction of energy consumption for the same application.
Thanks. And Brian, is energy usage and consumption, is that a key focus area of what you're working on and developing and innovating with at Intel?
So I've been in this industry for quite a while, and it's always been part of our engagements with our customers, the power consumption of our products and our technologies. But in recent times, it's a far more dynamic conversation. So it's not just that one number. It's about a whole range of capabilities and issues and challenges around sustainability and power consumption and active power management. And it's based on a much more dynamic network. It's based on location. It's based on the broader system. It's based on use cases. And so this is an active and ongoing conversation that we're having with our customers and partners. And it's really exciting. And I think there's a lot there to benefit everybody in this emerging marketplace.
Martin, if I can turn to you, you've talked about what you're doing as a CSP at Deutsche Telekom, but what about the ecosystem and your partners? How do you encourage this whole ecosystem to follow your example and continue the sustainability drive?
I think that's a very good question. That's a very important topic, because I think we are all not alone in that journey in the telecommunication industry. We really started very, very open dialogues also with our vendors, especially with our vendors, to really commonly and jointly work on their R&D roadmaps to bring especially the topic energy efficiency way more important into their roadmaps. Because in the past, yes, we focused on the topic energy efficiency definitely already, but it is, as Gema said, and I think also Bernd mentioned it, it's getting way more important seeing all the new technologies coming in, and especially the traffic increase we are seeing of maybe 30%, maybe 25% year on year. So I think the focus is there. Additionally, and I think that is really an important topic, what we are currently seeing is that a lot of industry consortia, may it be a GSMA, may it be an NGMN, are starting really initiatives to jointly work on those topics. And I think especially in the telecommunications industry and in the ICT industry overall, we are all in that, and we only can be successful if we do it together.
Right, and Bernd, are you also seeing traction and support from across the industry, whether that's top-down support from associations or through your suppliers and ecosystem?
Yeah, sure. So I think we all together are driving that transformation in the industry. For example, most of us have already set a science-based target or committed to setting a science-based target in the near future, which aligns with the Paris Accord on limiting climate change to 1.5 degrees above the pre-industrial level. So by driving this and also working together in terms of developing a glide path for our industry, what does a science-based target look like for telco operators? We're all pushing in the same direction, and that then requires support from our supply chain as well. So if all of us now go to our vendors and say, we just committed to these targets and we want to go on a certain journey over the next decade, what are you doing to support us? Then it drives transformation in our supply chain as well, and gives the volume and pressure to do that. I think the other areas where we've always been looking is including energy performance in procurement exercises, so that we can benchmark the products with their energy performance or with the life cycle cost. But what we're seeing more and more now is other criteria around own carbon footprint of our supply chain, or own carbon reduction targets in the supply chain operation, or in the life cycle assessment of their products, becoming more and more important, especially with our journey on setting the science-based target, which include the indirect emissions that happen in our supply chain. So there's a lot of pressure and joint effort that will drive the transformation here.
And Gema, you've spoken about investors and the need for sustainable investments, and for the board to take this very seriously. We've looked at the supply chain and the ecosystem. What about demand from customers? To what extent are your customers directing you and encouraging you to make these positive changes?
Well, I think that customers are really pushing into that more and more. No? I think that, as I've been saying at the beginning, no, millennials and new generations are really putting in their decision making when they purchase different goods, even the telecoms, these things into the equation. No? So we don't have specific, numbers on specifically how they are valuing this from a telecom company, because I think that among customers is still a little bit unknown. No, for example, I don't know to what extent our customers, and we are trying to push this. No, I don't think that as a sector we are very good on marketing in terms of the telco companies. But I don't know to what extent, for example, in Spain, that we are, as you all know, we are trying to reduce or to eliminate all the copper networks, the old copper networks, and substituting this with fiber. With fiber to the home, we are one of the first countries in Europe with the biggest deployment on fiber. And this fiber is 85%, as one of you mentioned at the beginning, is 85% more efficient in terms of energy consumption than copper. This is allowing us to close a lot of central buildings for operating the networks, which is driving a lot of energy efficiency. So we are putting in the hands of our customers a real green product, because we are saving energy, we are saving emissions. No? And I don't know to what extent our customers are really understanding this and are really demanding specifically this. But I am sure that they will, no? Because we are seeing this as a push from many other sectors, many other companies, ranging from food to clothes to very different things. And this is a duty, I think, no? And this is a little bit of pushing from myself to the rest of the industry, a little bit of duty of ourselves to really make our customers know that we are really, and not only ourselves green ourselves and making ourselves greener, but also making the rest of the people being green. No? And I think Martin mentioned this COVID crisis that we are all living are really somehow experimenting this, no? Because we are saving a lot of, for example, now that we are in this very nice congress from home and from a virtual congress, rather than flying all over and like spending a lot of and doing a lot of emissions to the atmosphere, that we are saving thanks to the telecom networks and thanks to the connectivity. So I think that the demand is here. New generations are really pushing hard to this, and there is and there will be more and more.
Brian, it's becoming apparent that technology has a very positive role to play in reducing overall energy consumption. What about the role of technology also in supporting decarbonisation across industry sectors and our CSP's customers?
So yes, indeed. So we have been, looking at all of these, different use cases, if you like, and at the heart of this, transformation that we've been on over the last couple of years, and at the heart of 5G is unlocking these new business and these new use cases, new business models, and different engagement models. So the provision of the underlying technology to unlock all of that is founded in standards. It's founded in the intent behind NFV. It's founded in this transformation going on towards cloud native. So at the heart of that, I think there's some really interesting things evolving through various aspects of the industry. CNTT, for example, I think is doing a great job in standardizing some of that infrastructure. And I think the work that we do across the industry as we head in that direction is going to really benefit us. A good example of that is, at the beginning of NFV, there was a lot of focus on, this kind of new ecosystem and on performance. And in recent times, it's now a lot more around flexibility, automation, unlocking the power of AI. And so once you get that ecosystem up and running, which I think is there to a large extent, but we're yet to unlock the true power of that automated network. And once you do that, then you can really, drive into the managing, the power of your network, especially, when it's not at peak performance, those hours of sleep. How do we manage that network to, move our workloads around, deploy the services where they need them? These are all things that feed into that ecosystem and that whole e-commerce that's building up around it.
Thanks. And Martin, are you seeing similar things with your vertical sector customers and industries with regards the way that technology can help them?
Definitely. So if you talk about smart solutions, maybe from smart home to smart buildings, smart cities whatsoever, so especially there we can help them with our technologies, and especially with the currently upcoming technologies like 5G, but also like mobile edge computing, like campus networks, to really help them to drive digitization and therefore help them also to reduce their carbon footprint. Overall, I think, especially when it comes to business customer, they are more and more now also interested in not only reducing their carbon emissions, which they will, but also reduce their energy consumption. And with these smart solutions provided by us or supported by the telecommunications industry, they will be able to succeed there as well.
Bernd, is there a danger that when we're promoting the benefits of telecoms and ICT for emission reduction and energy, overall energy reduction, especially the past few months has shown our reliance on digital, our reliance on video, that actually the industry, we're generating more usage, and this usage has got to be powered somewhere. That might not be our phones, but there could be a lot going on back at the data center. And we're not necessarily seeing the other side of the equation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we definitely need to see both sides of the equation. So in the past, for example, Vodafone had a target that we put the ratio in a KPI where we said, okay, how many tons of greenhouse gas emissions do our solutions help our customers to reduce their carbon emissions? And how is that in relation to our own carbon footprint? Yeah, and in this KPI, for example, we capture both sides, but we moved slightly away from this and focus more on absolute target in both sides now. So we have, similar to my colleagues, ambitious targets around renewable electricity supply, energy efficiency, and driving down our greenhouse gas emissions, which is obviously our responsibility. And also that optimization is something that we need to do to be competitive in the market. So if we don't drive energy performance in our operations, we obviously operate at higher cost than our peers. So there's a natural driver for us to optimize our own environment, but also to work together in terms of improving equipment in our supply chain or solutions in our supply chain. If you then look on the other side, on the enabling benefit, I can give you an example. We did an assessment together with the Carbon Trust, where we looked at how our products and services help the customers. And we estimate that around 30% of our IoT connections, of which we have 100 million globally, in some way or form help the customers. Yeah, so that could be connectivity to smart meters or the smart cities that Martin mentioned earlier, or in the smart logistics, by improving truck rolls, by optimizing the route planning. We take roughly, or we help our customers roughly to save 4 million tons of carbon. If you put that in relation to our own carbon footprint, which is currently around 2 million tons, that's already a ratio of 2 to 1, although it's not all our own contribution, what the customer says, but we provide the tools to make a lot of things happen. And if you look at more and more use cases that come with 5G, in healthcare, remote doctor's appointment, the use of drones to do inspections of pipelines or transmission lines where you can avoid truck rolls, and all sorts of other use cases that require that short latency that you have in 5G. There's lots more I think our industry can do. And as I said earlier, we need to keep our focus. How do we provide that data volume, that latency in the most efficient way? But I wouldn't say we have a lot of levers to limit the data traffic. Yeah, we work on different solutions with service providers to reduce the data traffic or to bring the compute power close to the customer application to avoid lots of transport, etc. But at the end of the day, there's a demand of data that drives the benefits for our customers, and we just need to see how we provide that in the most efficient way.
Brian, Bernd was talking about 5G use cases there. When we were conceiving 5G, I'm pretty sure energy efficiency was one of the key tenets that we were trying to address. And yet data continues to go up. Has 5G a positive role to play in sustainability for our industry, or does it also require technologies such as a shift to edge computing for this to really work?
Well, indeed, 5G is, about, so much more than, just the data that we've had before, data throughput. It's around these use cases that we've just been hearing about. And many of those use cases require that edge part to it, that more remote, closer to customers, closer to where the data is, both generated and consumed. And as part of that new network, this is where that move to autonomous infrastructure is going to take hold. And to unlock the true efficiencies of this new 5G network and all the associated use cases, we need to, unlock the dynamic capability of that underlying network. We spent a lot of time in the last few years, building out infrastructure and capacity on standard servers and standard infrastructure. And that's at the heart of NFV. And now it's time to unlock more of that by way of unlocking the power management features, taking a look at the entire system. And from what we're seeing from customers, the conversation has moved dramatically more to looking at the telemetry on the platform, plugging that into the closed loop automation systems that are available at telecom operators, and how they take that granular telemetry, take the insights that come from it, and apply AI algorithms to generate these insights and take actions on the network, meeting the demand like we've never met before. Not so much in terms of capacity, although that continues to grow radically, but more the dynamic nature of that capacity based on workloads, use cases, and locations.
Thanks. And Martin, will 5G and distributed edge-based platforms really have a positive impact on our industry's sustainability goals?
That's a really difficult question. Overall, if we talk about efficiency and sustainability per bit, definitely, yeah. So I think especially 5G will help us to provide the data we are getting to our customers in a highly efficient way. Overall, what I'm currently seeing, or what we in the industry currently seeing, is that not only the amount of data we are transporting is extremely rising, so overall the consumption is increasing, but also with some of the technologies we mentioned before, we mentioned mobile edge computing, we mentioned NFV. Yes, in theory there are certain gains to get out of that technologies, but only if we implement them right. Take for example, I had a lot of experiences now are made over the last couple of years when it comes to software in an NFV environment. If that software is not using the resources of that cloud or that virtualized environment in a highly efficient way, you see a waste of resources and therefore a higher energy consumption than before. So if we don't really focus on the topic efficiency, energy efficiency in particular, when it comes to all these new technologies, then we will see the opposite of what we thought. Additionally, maybe one thing to mention, because 5G is then enabling also new services also for our customer. Take topics like cloud gaming, cloud VR, cloud AR. So shifting kind of the consumption from the customers into our network, which maybe overall has a positive impact on the sustainability, yeah, and the CO2 emissions. But we as a communication service provider, we have to be really careful that we are able to cope with that increase in energy consumption in the future as well.
Thank you. And a final question to Gema before we have to wrap this session up. Technologies, new technologies, 5G, edge, softwareization, the move to cloud native, all this is helping CSPs in their transformation journey to becoming digital services providers. But can we rely on technology itself to help us with sustainability? Or is it the way we implement technology? Is there a lot more needed to be done at a board level, strategically in the company to achieve our goals?
Absolutely, Guy. I think that both are very important, but I think that 5G are going to enable us to give and to deep dive on the kind of services like you've mentioned in technologies like cloud, like IoT, like big data, like AI. I mean, there are coming technologies that are going to really drive the energy efficiency and the efficiency of other industries. As an example, it's said that digitalisation could cut the total energy use in residential and commercial buildings by around 10% by 2030. No? That is something that is being enabled by IoT. And there are, 5G is 100 times faster, 100 times more capable. It is nearly eliminating latency, which is key for many industries that are going to use cloud technologies, for example, or as I've been saying, IoT, in order to improve their productivity. No? So I really believe that, and we are seen as a sector, we are seen as an enabler of this. I mean, as an example, when I've been talking to investors with our green bond issuance and through during the year, they are even, we were at first trying to tell them how greener are we becoming by installing fiber and by our energy efficiency and power saving features, a strategy and all of these things. And they were much interested in understanding how we are making greener other sectors, no? Such as these smart building things, such as the transportation industry with our, fleet management services. So I think that this is going to be a much bigger reality with 5G, because I think that it is a reality, because we are implementing these services already in many customers, in many industries. But with 5G, this is going to be amplified, no, somehow. So I really believe that we are a huge enabler of this, and we are going to bet on sustainability for sure.
Thank you very much, and thank you all very much indeed for joining us on Telecom TV. And if you have any questions for our guests or any additional comments or views you wish to add, then please do get in touch with us. And if you want to be part of the ongoing conversation, then you need to join us on our extra short discussion programme with Telecom TV's editorial director, Ray Lemaitre. Get in touch with us now through social media or email. Otherwise, please take a look at the sessions that we've already held. They are all available for on-demand viewing now right here on Telecom TV. And we'll be adding future videos to the archive as the week progresses. Coming up next on DSP Leaders World Forum is our penultimate session for this year, which looks at connectivity and the resurgence of telecoms in the global economy. And you'll be able to watch that tomorrow from 8 a.m. UK time. But for now, a final thank you to our panelists and to you for watching. Goodbye.